I'd like to go ahead and welcome everyone out to our Layton City Council meeting this evening for October 17th. Our start time is 7:05, and we appreciate the patience of those in the audience attending. As customary, we do like to start our meetings with the pledge and the prayer, or the prayer and the pledge, however we choose to. But each month we allow one of our council members to be in charge, and this month it is Council Member Bettina Smith Edmondson. So I'm going to go ahead and turn the time over for her.
Thank you, Mayor. I am honored to have this opportunity. This is our last meeting prior to your elections. And on tonight, I am going to offer prayer, and then I'm going to ask for Mr. Claude Young to come up, and he will help us to recite the pledge. He is a veteran. He is a member of our city who comes to the council meetings and voices his opinion, and we love it. And he is also the precinct chair for LA 34. And so I'm honored to allow him to come up and lead us in the pledge, just as one of those fun things that he gets to do as a citizen of Layton. So if you'll bow your heads with me, I will do the prayer, and then Mr. Young will lead us in the pledge. God, we thank you for this evening. We thank you for another opportunity to come before you and to work with the residents of our city and the council to do the business of Layton. God, we thank you for our first responders. We thank you for our schools. We thank you for just everyone who works on behalf of the city to help us have the life that you've allowed us to have. We ask that you would lead us and guide us on tonight in the decisions that we will make. We ask that you give us clarity of mind, help us to understand everything that's presented, and to make decisions that are in the best interest of the residents of this city. We thank you in advance for your guidance, and we ask that you be with us throughout the entirety of this meeting. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Amen. All right, Mr. Young, if you would come, and I'll ask you all to stand.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you very much. I love it when we have citizens participate in our program here. Before I actually get the meeting started, I also want to acknowledge that we do have Council Member Zach Bloxham online, and I know Council Member Tyson Robert was on, but he's not on at the moment. So anyway, with that, I'm going to turn the time over for any municipal announcements at this time. And I know somebody's going to be filling in.
The city has a Halloween bash, which is tomorrow night. According to the weather, we don't know what's going to happen. So it has the opportunity to go on as planned over by the museum at 4 o'clock, or is it 5 to 7?
5 to 8.
5 to 8. Or if it is bad weather, then it'll be at Central Davis Junior High in the gymnasium. So it's going to go on no matter what. And they wanted everyone to know that. So don't think that if it's raining, it's not going to happen. It's still going to happen. It'll just happen over at Central. So the best thing to do is drive by here. If you see a lot of people, stop. If not, keep going to Central.
Okay. It's fun for the kids, and we encourage them to dress up and enjoy all the games and activities.
We went to, did it last year over here by the museum, and I was amazed how many people. I mean, there's also a special attraction, a train that pulls them around, and the train had to stay an extra hour to get all the people that had bought tickets. So it was a very good, fun thing to do.
Yeah, a lot of great costumes, even by adults. Okay. Any other announcements?
I think we have one other event happening on Saturday. Whispers in the Dark?
Yes.
Okay. The LAYTON's Haunted Storytelling Night. And so that will be happening on October 19th from 3 to 9. There will also be an open air market, vendors, live music, food trucks, and storytelling. And that'll be right out here as well. Right?
Yeah. So the Saturday night opportunity is very similar to our Friday Night Fest, but it will have spooky stories in that night. So, and it's put on with the museum, Davis Arts Council, Layton City Parks and Rec, and all the vendors. So anyway, kind of a fun deal. 2 nights in a row to be able to celebrate a fun holiday, along with everything else that's going on in the city. I know that there's a lot of different trunk or treats or festivities, so it's just a fun time to kind of get out and enjoy the last minute of our fall weather. Okay, if there's no other citizen or any other municipal events to be announced, I want to go ahead and go on then down to item number 3. We do not have any verbal petitions or anything, so I'll move on to our citizens comment portion of our meeting. This part of our meeting is an opportunity for citizens to address this governing body. If you're speaking on an item that is not part of the public hearing, you're welcome to stand up, come to the mic, state your name for the record. You do not have to give your address, but we would like to know at least what city you're from. And then at the same time, it doesn't have to pertain just to items on the agenda. If you have anything at all you feel like you need to bring before us, please do so. Just understand that we will not engage in any type of dialogue. So if you have questions, then we'll be happy to get back with you. So with that, I'll now turn the time over to our citizens for comments.
Hi, I forgot you guys took public comment. I so appreciate that. Jennifer Garner, I live here in Layton. I understand that they're looking at cold blue shelters, but I wanted to maybe provide some information. So the Biden administration has allowed schools to use the McKinney-Vento Act to count homeless students. In the McKinney-Vento Act, they are including students who live with grandma, if mom lives there too. So anybody else. So if I moved back home with my mom and took my kids with me, my 3 kids would be listed in the school system as homeless. So I have a teacher friend, and she said, I have 5 students in my class that are considered homeless, but they live in bigger houses than me because they live with grandma up on the hill. So I just hope that when you hear, this is how many homeless people we have, that you will ask the question, can you give me the details on how many people live with grandma in a giant big house? Also, the McKinney-Vento Act counts kids who live in trailer parks. That McKinney-Vento Act, I believe, is discriminatory because some of our most affordable housing is in those trailer parks, and they are counting every kid who lives in that trailer park as in unstable housing and therefore qualifies as homeless. So that is where the Davis School District is getting, we have 2,600 homeless kids. Well, are they housed or are they homeless? Because no kid deserves to be homeless. But if they're living with grandma or in the most affordable because their parents are wise and in what they can afford, then that's setting everybody's hair on fire over something that's not the whole picture, if that makes sense. But I believe that Utah is giving, and if we keep throwing more money at things that aren't the real issue, then we're ignoring the real issue. So I hope that you'll ask more questions when people bring forth data, because that is totally a legal way to define them. But if you'll ask for that specific data, I would super duper appreciate it. And thank you so much.
Okay, thank you for your comments. Okay, is there anyone else?
My name is Kelly Wright, and I am a Layton resident. I appreciate the opportunity to address the council tonight. I have a handout for the council members and perhaps for our city manager, Mr. Jensen. And with the missing council members, there should be even a couple left over here. My topic tonight is your consent item B on tonight's agenda, the new pipeline in Layton. I understand, living in Utah all my life, about the need for good water management and resources, how precious it is. But I want to suggest a change to the final leg of the pipeline, where it leaves 575 north. You'll see this on a map later when you get to item B, and they're the consent items, and crosses between two adjacent residential lots, then goes down into Adams Reservoir. I offer two reasons for making a suggestion to change. Well, first let me say that the actual suggestion is that the route of that last leg of the pipeline be moved 2 lots more west. And my two reasons for making the suggestion are, and you can see it in the map I've given you, the red is the present location that's in your packet for tonight's meeting. Goes between lots 71 and 72. The proposal I'm suggesting is that it be moved 200 feet or 2 lots worth to the west and go between lot 46 and lot 70. My first reason for that suggestion is that in between the red shaded area, lots 71 and 72, there is no existing utility easement. I verified that with Davis County today. And I also verified with the Davis County recorder that between lots 46 and lot 70, there is an existing utility easement of 10 feet wide on each of those 2 lots, making a total of 20-foot wide easement between those 2 lots. We'll access the reservoir just fine. So it's a utility easement question that I'm bringing up as my first reason. My second reason for making this suggestion is that you can see I've illustrated a dock there on the shape of a T. That dock will only be about 40 feet from the exit of the pipeline if it goes in its existing location. If this suggestion is taken and is moved 2 lots westward where there is already a utility easement, then that exit of the pipeline will be approximately 240 feet from that dock. Okay, so that's my suggestion and the reasons for it, and I thank you for your time and for your attention, and I want to know if there's any questions.
Like I said, we don't usually engage in any dialogue, but certainly when we get to that topic on the consent item, if the council has any questions, they'll ask our staff for it at that time.
I will still be here.
Okay, thank you. Okay, is there anyone else that wish to address us at this time under citizens' comment? Like I said, if you're here for the public hearing, we'll make sure that you have an opportunity to speak on that item as well. Okay, seeing that there's none, let's go ahead and move our meeting along then. We'll go ahead and move into our consent items tonight. We have 3 of them that will be presented. These 3 items, once they are presented, the action will come back to the council and they can actually act upon all 3 items in one motion and vote. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn the time over to Steve Jackson to talk about our first item, which is a bid award between DBA and CL Water Solutions.
Mayor, Council, it's good to be with you tonight. Before you for your consideration is Resolution 24-28. The resolution is for a contract with CNL Water Solutions for our various sanitary sewer repairs project, project number 21 or 24-41. The resolution authorizes the execution of the agreement with CNL Water Solutions for 6 different schedules for the repair of various sanitary sewer issues that are within the city, including reconnection of laterals, manholes, and other replacement of pipes. So you can see Ann Street, Maryland Drive, Canyon View, and Case Creek Trail, the Adamswood Road, 2350 East, and then 1575 East are all the areas that we have these proposed projects in. We did receive 3 bids for this project. The CNL Water Solutions submitted the lowest responsible bid in the amount of $366,098. The engineer's estimate was $306,000. Staff would recommend that the council adopt Resolution 24-28, awarding the bid to in situ form doing business as CNL Water Solutions. Authorize the mayor or the city manager, to execute the agreement for the various sanitary sewer repairs project 24-41. Are there any questions that I can answer on this project?
Council?
Yeah, quick question.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Mayor. So if we approve this, what's the schedule? Before winter? Or?
No. We have given them quite a long window, so it would be sometime throughout the next year that they can complete this project. However, when they come to a repair location, they have to finish that repair before they can disappear and do something else. So it is filler work for them, but we feel like it's a good project for them to be able to work on as they get time.
And are there, for sewer, I mean, can they work in the wintertime or depending on what the project is?
Depending on what the project is, they can. And so we think there might be some that they do in the winter, but there are also some that might need to wait till spring. The Canyon View Drive one, for example, is on a hillside, and so we'll probably not want to do that one unless there's some really decent weather to be in there taking care of that. So.
Do any of these projects require a bypass, or is it all just...
We don't anticipate there needing to be a bypass, but there is some additional costs that are included in our project so that if we do need the bypass, we can have that taken care of as we move forward.
Okay, very good.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Just more. The Canyon View one?
Yeah.
Is that to shore up that pipeline there, or is it something else?
That pipeline has some issues that we're concerned with. We want to make sure that line doesn't shift and move, and so we need to fix that.
Are these schedules in order of prioritization, or are they just listed?
Not necessarily. There are some of these that we're fixing some of the issues so that we can then put a slip line down the pipe as well. So there are some that we're going to coordinate with the contractor that does the slip lining to make sure that they're done before our other project. But there's not necessarily a prioritization where we're going to start at A and go through the rest, but more of what the contractor's availability is.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay, very good. We appreciate that. I know you have the next item, so if you wouldn't mind, just go ahead and stay up there and discuss item B.
Perfect. So item B is an interlocal cooperation agreement between Layton City and Weaver Basin Water Conservancy District, Resolution 24-29. The resolution authorizes the execution of this interlocal agreement. The purpose for the interlocal agreement is that Weaver Basin received funding from the Governor's Office of Economic Opportunity in the amount of $2.5 million to optimize water conveyance and eliminate the loss of water in the system in the area of Layton, particularly the Home Creek service area where they have flood irrigation. So the award or the grant was awarded to Weaver Basin. Weaver Basin approached the city about partnering on projects to increase and optimize the service for the water in the area. And so the projects that are identified in this grant is first the one that was spoken about in the public comment period here. It's a water line that would finish connecting Holmes Reservoir to Andy Adams Reservoir, Gentile Street through the subdivision there, and then as was mentioned, we do show that line conceptually is proposed to go through those 2 lots. I want to remind the council that you're not approving that alignment. That will come at a different date when we bring that project back to you. But we certainly will talk about that comment and look into that as we move forward. So that project is proposed to be $1.2 million of the grant, and then part of the grant would be to complete this project by the end of 2026 so that we can utilize all of those funds. The second part of the project is that there are several properties within Layton City who still irrigate with flood irrigation water off of the Holmes Creek system. The optimization here is that some of these smaller properties probably would be more efficiently watered through our culinary water system in the area. You can see the properties in blue are all the eligible parcels that were considered for this grant. All of the gray area is watered through our culinary water system. So approximately 40 properties that could be switched over from the flood irrigation to the pressurized culinary system. The grant funding there will allow for the city to purchase the water rights, or the water shares from Holmes Creek Irrigation shareholders that are being used on those properties. Also pay them to install a pressurized sprinkler system on the culinary system, and then give them a 10-year price differential for the difference in cost between their current shareholder price and the cost to be on the secondary system for Layton City. If the property owner or shareholders, property owners agree to that, they would become customers of Layton City's culinary system. It would become a more efficient way to water these properties from the grant standpoint, and so that's where that funding is coming from. The approximate cost of that would be $765,000 if all of the property owners accepted the offer that is being extended to them. So the grant does require that the funds be obligated by the end of 2024, and then all of the funds be actually spent by the end of 2026. So we're hoping to be able to move forward with this. If the council approves this resolution, it will go before the Weber Basin Board at the end of this month as well to approve, and then all of the contracts will be in place by the end of 2024 in order to move this project forward. Staff recommends the council adopt resolution 2429, authorizing the mayor to execute the interlocal cooperation agreement between Layton City and Weber Basin Water Conservancy District for water resources conservation project reimbursement. Are there any questions I can answer?
Council, do you have questions? Go ahead.
I don't really have a question, but just wanted to bring up something that we talked about in the work meeting. There are a number of homes here. You identified approximately 40. And I know Councilmember Roberts is not able to be on the call, but he did have a question about the cost of the shares that these residents currently have, and wanted to just make sure that residents who did choose to move into this agreement would be made whole. And so I appreciate your iteration on the 10 years of that kind of cost deferment, allowing residents who do choose to use this, where they would still be paying what they've been normally paying for a matter of 10 years, and then us being able to kind of take care of the additional costs there, as well as paying for installation of sprinkler systems. Anything additionally that they would have to incur on their own would be able to be covered by this grant. And so that was just something I wanted to make sure was out. I don't think we spoke about it in detail in this meeting, but we did have a pretty robust discussion in the work meeting about that, and that any resident who chose to participate in this would be made whole in that financial way. So thank you for that information that you gave us prior.
Thank you.
Good point.
Madam Mayor, it's Councilman Bloxham.
Okay. Yes, go ahead, Councilman Bloxham.
Steve, I just wanted to say thank you for speaking to the comment that the gentleman made. He took time out of his busy schedule to come in and make a comment, and I just appreciated you recognizing it and addressing it and letting him know that will be something that will come up to us in the future. So thank you for doing that.
Yeah.
Okay. Councilman Morris.
Thanks, Mayor. Steve, you You said water rights, and then you quickly said water shares.
Yeah.
Can you give a quick primer on the difference of those two?
Yeah, so the water rights are the water rights that are issued by the state of Utah. All the water in the state of Utah is considered, the property of the state, and then your right to use that water is based on the water rights that are issued by the state of Utah. The water shares are actual shares in the company who hold the rights. So Holmes Creek Irrigation holds the underlying water right, but the shareholders have the shares that give them the right to use that water from the company. And so the difference is we're not purchasing the right itself. We're purchasing the shares that allow that water to be used on the ground. Yeah.
And most of these homeowners probably have maybe a half a share or one share at the most? Or do
Most
you
of
have
them
an
are
idea?
about one share.
One share.
It depends on the size of the parcel. The limitation was anything under 2 acres of ground was how they were considered to be eligible for this grant.
Okay, so at this point in time, then you've notified these homeowners regarding their water shares, but anybody that would be impacted on the placement of the pipe and that, when we get to that point, then you'll notify them, or how would these folks know what's going on?
We have reached out to the one property owner that we were exploring putting the pipeline through. The rest of that pipeline project would be a project notification as we move forward.
Okay.
So,
alrighty. Okay, Council, do you have any other questions on this? I mean, you already spoke to the timing of the project, that it needs to be completed by the end of 2026, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
There's no further questions on that. Then let's go ahead and move on to item number C, which is a plat amendment with Harris Point subdivision. And Mr. Chad Wilkinson's going to speak to this item.
Excuse me. Thank you, Mayor, Council. Yes, as was mentioned, this is a plat amendment, subdivision plat amendment for the Harris Point commercial subdivision. By way of context, it's just right there at that little red dot. It's the just north of Antelope, just approximately 700 west. Here's the subdivision that's outlined in red. You can see that this is an existing commercial area. We've got some existing commercial zones there. BRP, which is our business research park, to the east. The property that we're talking about really is just this parcel that's outlined in red. This subdivision originally included some additional property that I'm kind of outlining now to the south and to the north, but we're just talking about this lot 101, current lot 101. So that's what it looks like. These buildings are important. I'm going to just point out the 3 buildings you can see within that parcel and tell you why that's important here in just a second. The purpose of this subdivision is to create parcels that would put one of these buildings on each of those new lots. So you can see the new lots that are proposed, 1, 2, 3, 4 new lots. Each of those lots on the west side would have a building on it. Then this would be a vacant, undeveloped parcel to the east. This is the previous subdivision. You can see, or excuse me, the existing subdivision. You can see that existing 1 lot that exists there with the red outline around it. Again, this was reviewed by the Planning Commission at their last meeting, and the Planning Commission has recommended that the council approve this subdivision amendment, creating these 4 lots for the Harris Point subdivision. And I'm happy to answer any questions if I can.
Council?
Quick question. Thanks, Mayor. Just reasons you'd subdivide? Generally?
What's that?
Generally?
Reasons to subdivide generally?
Generally, I mean, it's just all one, it's owned by one property owner.
You could potentially sell off each of these lots separately with those buildings on them. Yeah. The applicant's here if you had a question specifically for him about the reasons, but that, generally speaking, that would be a reason why you do it, so you can sell off individual buildings. Mm-hmm. You can see one thing to note, the Cane's restaurant does take its access from these properties. Those easements will stay intact. Those remain just across the property as shown.
So this is the undeveloped area?
I'll go back to that picture.
Because I was going to say,
everything
is the new crispy cone and all that part of this?
That's right. So this will be on its own lot, this building where crispy cone is.
Yeah. The
David's Bridal, which has got a Halloween store in it now. And then, I always forget the name, Zhao's. Asian food
Asian
right there. So that there will be still a vacant or undeveloped parcel to the east.
Okay. So there can be development there.
Sure.
Got it. Okay. Any questions, Council?
Perhaps semi-unrelated. there is for that Keynes property, you know, we spoke about this before. There is a marquee. Is that what you call them? The signs on the outside. If this is divided up and those individual lots are then sold, would that sign that is currently on the outside of the Keynes property that also has the signage for Zao, would that sign be owned by the one owner who has the Keynes lot at that point, or would that sign go, like, where would that sign go? I guess who would be the owner
sign,
of that?
Yeah, the property ownership would still be the Keynes property, but that sign was approved as a project. I'm trying to think the exact name of that. It just left me. We just went through this process. Garrett's here. Yeah, come on. It's essentially a project sign for all those parcels, so it doesn't change the ability for those people to put signage on there. It applies to everything within the red and the Keynes property. They can have that signage. I'm forgetting the exact name in the code right now. It's just left me. But plan development sign. Thank you. That's exactly right. Yes, okay. Plan development sign is what we've. It was approved by the Planning Commission, and they can continue to keep that sign the way that it is. It'll operate just exactly the same.
Okay, thank you.
To answer the question before, another reason for subdividing it is right now it's all encumbered under one loan, and it gives us the variance to do that. You know, when you have a vacant building like David's Bridal come up, loan covenants that you have to hit, this gives us the ability to possibly pay off one, sell it, and then encumber it with different loans as well. So it gives a little flexibility. Thank you, Council.
Mm-hmm. Smart.
Thanks.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much. Okay, Council, I'll bring the consent items back for action. So whoever would like to make this motion again, please state the resolution, or in the case of item C, please state the reason for it. You could add that to the resolution.
I don't know if it's time yet, right? Maybe we ask to include that. Can I ask one other question before I make a motion? Specific to item B, Steve, you mentioned that the alignment that Mr. Wright spoke of is something that would come up at a later date. Is that something that is always up for discussion, or is that something that would need to be brought up specifically to discuss later?
In other words, do we need to make that part of the motion or not?
I don't believe so. This is an agreement that just says this is the project that's going to be funded, and then the alignment will come back to you as a bid award or a project thing. So there will be more discussion with the council as to where that needs to go. We would have to acquire the property or the easement if we decide that that's the proper place to put this pipeline. So that would need to come back to the council anyway.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
All right, Madam Mayor. So I move that we approve the consent items as listed. Item A, the bid award project 24-41 and resolution 24-28. Item B, the interlocal cooperation agreement, resolution 24-29, and the plat amendment for the Harris Point subdivision.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved in second that we adopt the consent items as presented. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay. There you have it. It's any nays? I didn't hear it. I heard all of them. So anyway, there you have it. The consent items have passed unanimously. So thank you, everyone, for those presentations and comments. We'll now move on to item number 6, which is a public hearing. But before we open up the public hearing at this time, we will have the information presented to the council by, once again, Mr. Chad Wilkinson. And this is regarding a proposed amendment to the municipal code.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. One moment, I inadvertently closed that screen, and I shouldn't have. Let me put my password in really quick. So as was mentioned, this is an amendment or a proposed amendment to the municipal code, to the text of the municipal code. This particular proposal was brought forward by a property owner here in Layton City. This is an amendment that would allow for tattoo establishments to be located within our PB zone. We had an opportunity in the previous meeting, in our work meeting, to talk a little bit about the history of this property. I want to just go through that very briefly. I'm not going to go in the same detail as what we did in the previous meeting, but for the benefit of the audience that wasn't a part of that meeting. Again, this property was created about 30 years ago. It was through an unauthorized subdivision process. Was found subsequent to that time as the current property owner came in for a development application that the city identified that this parcel did not meet our city standards and was in fact created outside of those city processes. So it was an unauthorized lot. They brought that forward to the applicant and said that further development of the property would not be possible until that particular problem was resolved. So as they talked about solutions, one solution was to unravel or unwind that property sale that had occurred, that unauthorized illegal parcel split that had occurred, and put that property back together with the property that it came from, and do a proper amendment and a proper sale and proper division of that property. The applicant was asking if there were other options available, and one of the options was to rezone the property to PB, and that's what occurred. The city in good faith said, we'll go ahead and rezone this property to PB, and that's kind of what brings us to with the stipulation that their uses would be reduced, that were allowed for that property. And that kind of gets us to where we are today. We've got a property that just doesn't, it's not necessarily a property that fits where it is. It was a property that was given a zoning designation to try to fix a problem that occurred because of an unauthorized lot split. And so what we're looking at today is a request to change the zone to allow a use that just has never really been anticipated in that particular zoning district. I want to go through, we didn't go through a lot, the staff report in the previous meeting, but I want to just talk about just a few things related to your staff report that was included in your packet. And that is, looking at these three factors. One is, what's the purpose of adding land use to a proposed zone? Anytime we look at a zone change or a text amendment, what's the purpose of adding that land use to the zone? Is the proposed land use compatible with the proposed zone? And does adding the proposed land use advance good policy, and is it consistent with the general plan? So I think we pointed out a few things related to the PB zone. This really is a zone that is typically found surrounded by residential zoning. And I've got on the map here a few examples of where we've got existing PB zones. This is the property of the applicant that's brought this amendment forward. You can see this is atypical. It's not typical that a PB zone be completely surrounded by commercial zoning like this one. More typical is what we see here on Gordon Avenue, where we've got a PB zone that goes quite a ways sometimes into these residential zones, surrounded by existing single-family residential. And it's really to give an opportunity for very limited uses, commercial uses, that are neighborhood serving, that serve that surrounding neighborhood, that give them an opportunity to get services such as accounting services or, maybe a small medical office, small dental office, things that are neighborhood serving. So again, these are some examples of that particular zoning district and where they're located. One of the things, again, the question is, what's the purpose of adding that land use? We talked a little bit about that this would allow for that tattoo use in this zone. In all those properties, everything that's zone PB could potentially have that zoning or potentially have that use. And it really is to accommodate this request from this individual property owner. I think as we look at that, as a broad question is there a need to add this use? Staff's recommendation is that we have really, even compared to other surrounding communities, hundreds of acres that are already zoned that would allow for a tattoo use. That's a place where that use could go in without any kind of special zone change or any kind of approval other than what's required in our code for that use. So our recommendation is that there is really not a need to expand this. We haven't had a huge demand for this expansion of tattoo uses in other zones. And if there were, our recommendation would be that this would not be the first zone that we look at. We'd want to look at other zones that this might be a more appropriate. Now, I'm going to talk about that when I want to make sure that when I'm using the word appropriate, we're talking about a land use question here. This is not a judgment call on the type of use. And I'm going to explain that in just a little bit, just a moment. Hopefully that'll help the council to understand staff's recommendation. So again, looking at the operational characteristics, we just don't feel like this is a compatible use with that particular zone district. And that kind of answers that that second question. One of the reasons why, and it's pointed out in the staff report, is that the PB zone is severely restricted. There are about 51 uses that are allowed in the PB zone, and our regular commercial zones allow, on average, more than twice that. 107 uses typically for these CP1, CP2, CP3 uses, CH. CH is our broadest commercial zone, allows the most uses. It's a very appropriate zone. It's along major streets, allows for good access, has streets that are already built for capacity of traffic and carrying traffic. So again, it's very, very compatible use, or compatible zone with a wide variety of uses. So that kind of speaks to number two. Number three, I think, again, when we look at what is this really consistent with the general plan? This is where I want to talk a little bit about our existing PB zones. So again, if this change was to be approved by the council, it would allow tattoo establishments in all PB zones, regardless of what the location is. You can see this is one on West Gentile Street, just north of Gentile, another one further to the west. I actually want to talk about what property we didn't talk about too much in our meeting, though, and this is a property on Layton Parkway, Angel, out to the west. This is a property that those of you that were here during the zone change process will remember. It was a very, very controversial zone change. And this was not talking about the current use. This was talking about just the uses, the limited uses that are allowed in the PB zone. And very, very good discussion from neighborhoods about the impacts of any PB zone in this property. I think that's one thing that staff wants to be very clear about, is that in our recommendation, what we really should be talking about is maybe, if there's a desire to change the PB zone, which is not the question before you tonight. This is a very focused question on whether or not tattoos should be here. But if there's a broader discussion about what uses are appropriate in the PB zone, we feel like that should be that broader discussion. This is an area that those of you that were in the commission or the council will remember there was some significant concerns from neighboring property owners about the uses that are already allowed in that PB zone. And our recommendation is that maybe we do have an intensity of land use in those PB zones that are not as compatible with those residential zones, and maybe it's appropriate to look at pulling some of those back rather than adding a new use. And that's really what it comes down to. There are a number of uses. It's not this particular use per se, although we do have concerns about the operational characteristics of this and compatibility with PB. There are a number of uses allowed in the CH, CP3, CP1 zones that we wouldn't feel were compatible in this zone either. Again, the idea is that we're trying to limit the uses in this PB zone, not expand them. So our concern again is that general idea of expansion of uses in this zone, we don't, because of those operational characteristics, we don't feel that adding this particular use into this zone is appropriate, and that we should follow the Planning Commission's recommendation that this request be denied. That being said, if the council directs us to come back and have a broader policy discussion about appropriate uses in PB zones and various distinguishing characteristics of uses and whether or not they should be allowed in this particular zone, we think that's great, and we would be happy to do that. But again, this very focused question of whether or not tattoo establishments should be allowed in the PB zone, our recommendation is that the council deny this request, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, council, do you have any questions before we open it up?
Yeah, just to maybe, thank you, Mayor. As I mentioned, maybe not exactly. I agree that it's not exactly what we're talking about tonight, but it's still related in the fact that the applicant was combining back to the procedure of needles, ink, tattoo for permanent makeup, and microblading. And so I think there is a broader policy discussion to be had. And what we didn't talk about, and I think it was in the notes, in the minutes of the Planning Commission, was if you had in this zone or whatever PB zone, if you had someone come in and say, hey, we just want to do microblading and permanent makeup. And that's not in any of our lists of uses, or that we should have a discussion about that. And then if we did do that, since it's allowed as an extension of hair salons and beauty, I think that'd be an issue. And I may just maybe leading along here, you can stop me, the attorney, but leading the witness, but sorry, Zach, wherever you are, but that a natural extension could also be from microblading and permanent makeup into designer tattoos. Like it just seems like, and I mentioned it earlier, that this crept up on us, that allowing this to already happen. And so now we send a mixed signal, at least to mixed message to at least this property owner that, hey, wait a minute. Now we can agree, I guess and I think this is where we disagree, is on the exact process of how deep the needles are and how permanent the ink is. But it's still, still a tattoo. And so yes, that's not exactly what we're talking about tonight or voting on tonight, possibly, but it is related.
Well, we appreciate that. And from staff's point of view, our recommendation is they are different. They're different uses. There's different procedures. There's different equipment used. These are different uses. Though the permanent makeup are usually associated with the ones we see anyway, or almost always are associated with a beautician type use, a beauty shop type use. It is something that's very limited in its scope. Even the areas of the body that those types of applications occur on are limited compared to a tattoo shop. So we do feel that they are different. And again, reasonable people, this is a reasonably debatable standard. And our recommendation to you is that these are two different applications of maybe something that's similar in some ways. But again, our recommendation is, if that's a discussion that the council would like to have from a policy standpoint, that we would recommend that we pull back uses from our PB rather than adding new ones. This is a zone that needs to be, again, very limited in the type of uses that we have, and perhaps that's something that we need to pull back further rather than adding another use into this zone.
So just one other thought then, and then I think Bettina has a question or two. We're not regulating the microblading or the permanent makeup. That's from the health department. Davis County does that, but we don't know if a beauty shop is doing that or not.
We do. They typically will tell us that they're doing permanent makeup as part of their application. We have approved some of those applications with permanent makeup for a beauty shop, certainly.
So they are. That's a question that we ask, or is that they just give that up?
Usually they include it in their application because there is a health department requirement for a separate application. So that's typical. We don't usually ask, just as a matter of course, are you also doing permanent makeup? It's just something that's usually volunteered.
And Davis County Health Department, all of this is, and we've chatted about this before, all of this is encompassed in body art. So whether it's tattoos, piercings, microblading, permanent makeup, that's all under one section as far as the health department's concerned.
As far as we know, they
look at them different.
Yeah, they have one permitting process for that, but again, they're not looking at it from a land use standpoint. They're looking at it from looking at health related standards. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. So along those similar lines, I think we do need to have a discussion about the zone in general. I have a couple of questions. You alluded a little bit to the fact that you do sometimes know if a salon is doing these types of cosmetic procedures, such as the permanent tattooing for, eyebrows or whatever it may be. Do you know if we have what about folks who have a salon in their home? Do they have to apply to get this same type of zone to do a salon in their home? And if so, do they then have to disclose if they are doing these types of procedures that are not just hair, nails?
Yeah, we have home occupation, barbers, beauticians, and I know of at least one that does include permanent makeup as part of their services.
Okay, and so that's a different zoning because they are doing that inside of their home.
It's residential use. There are guardrails as far as home occupation standards on those numbers of people that can come per day, the numbers of people that can work there, those types of things, parking.
And so what I understand is that these PB zones, because they are bordering residential areas, that the concern largely is due to things that you just mentioned, like traffic, the types of things that are going to be done because they're in or near residential areas. And so I guess again, it's the same kind of question that Councilmember Morris brought up, where you may have someone who is doing this already in a particular location that is similar to what we are identifying the PB should be because they're in an area that borders residential. I guess the concern is really that there is not so much a clarity there when it comes to this specific use, especially with the way the county looks at it versus the way the city is looking at it for land use, and just understanding as a resident what is okay, what is not okay. And so I think we have a duty to have some clarity around that for residents, something that is easy to understand. Specifically, we don't mention anything about cosmetic artistry, tattooing, microblading in our zoning language currently, because, that's something that 30 years ago wasn't really a thing, right? It may have been, but we didn't really know about it. And so even though it's not something that is up for vote tonight, I think it is somewhat difficult to look at those the way that you would like us to look at them and make a determination without thinking about the potential use and others who might want to do something similar. And so I would prefer that maybe we look at this, like we maybe step back and look at the zone, look at what the intention is of whatever the zone is, and really look at these uses to try and come up with something that's going to be clear, because there are 3 instances that we've just mentioned within this 5 minutes that all are very similar but have nuanced differences that I think would be hard to explain to the average resident. They're hard for me to explain, and I've read the packet.
Yeah,
so
I appreciate it. I think that broader policy discussion is something that could be had. It's not part of this particular application. I think it's important to, if the council so desires, for us to come back and have this discussion. I will say that while I definitely understand the concern and that there may be for some people, a hard time seeing a difference. There hasn't been from staff's point of view. We have very clearly defined that permanent makeup is something that is allowed, that is something that is an accessory to a beauty shop type use, that is something that can go forward. We do see differences. From our perspective, it's easy for us to distinguish between the two. The equipment that's used, the types of procedures that are done. So it's not difficult for us. There's not unclarity from staff's point of view. Now, that being said, City Council, you are the policy makers, and we want to have that discussion if you wish at some future date. But that's not the question today. Today's question is whether or not tattoos should be allowed in the PB zone. But we're happy to come back and have that discussion to explain what our thoughts are on this, why we see that there's a difference. We do see that there is a difference, that there is enough of a difference that it's not difficult for us to distinguish between the two.
The other thing I'd like to add to that is that in looking at the minutes from the Planning Commission, the vote was 3-3 until the chair voted and made it a 4-3. So it's not as black and white as maybe it's being presented tonight, maybe to staff, but those of us on the council who brought up questions, as well as those on the Planning Commission reading those notes, those minutes, that to me there's enough cloudiness for the discussion to need to be had. My other, probably a larger concern is just understanding how much the applicant is aware of their options. And I know that both you and Alex have mentioned that you've spoken with the applicant a number of times, and the applicant is very well aware of the options that are presented. I know that I'm sure that the applicant reached out to more than one of us on the council at some time in the past about this, but I would really like to understand how much the applicant knows about what their options really are in order to make a decision on this. I do agree with Councilmember Morris, and I believe Councilmember Thomas in the work meeting, saying that we're not really interested necessarily in adding any type of use for a blanket purpose. I don't think that's the expectation or the desire of anybody on the council, but I think understanding the intent and what is available to residents who want to have a business here, or folks who want to purchase land and have a certain type of business, just making sure that there's clarity there. And so I just think that it's not as black and white as maybe it's being presented when there are, 4-3 vote, and then 3 of us at least bringing up questions tonight just to want more clarity. So I just wanted to make sure that was noted.
Thank you. Certainly we've included the minutes. The vote is there. We're not trying to paint this as a picture that there wasn't a lot of discussion. We've mentioned there was 2 meetings worth of discussion. So we certainly appreciate that. There's no intent from staff to try to paint this as something that didn't have a lot of discussion. We've been very clear that it did have a lot of discussion at Planning Commission. By including the minutes, we wanted to make sure you had that discussion. I will say though that this is the standard of review is reasonably debatable. And in any kind of reasonably debatable standard, reasonable people can disagree. And from staff's point of view, we do have an opinion. We're going to give you our professional opinion from a zoning standpoint. We have that opinion. That is our recommendation to you. That doesn't mean that we haven't listened and we haven't worked through this with others. We've looked at this very closely. That's important to us to do. But we do have a recommendation, and that is our recommendation to you tonight, is that this, again, this particular request should be denied. If we want to have that additional discussion, which is also something that the Planning Commission highly recommended the council have, is that additional policy discussion, maybe outside of this particular application, to talk about how we're applying this. Is this the appropriate way to apply this or not? That's perfectly good, and we'd be happy to do that at a future meeting or at some other convenient time for the council.
I believe that's the dignity index in action. Okay. Any other questions?
Statement, maybe. I'm not sure what can happen in a PB, except I do know salons are allowed and whatever you want.
51 other uses.
The weird stuff that I don't get. But it would be nice to know, to me, we're making a decision. This specific decision affects every PB, not just where they're at. And so that creates concern to me. But I believe it would be nice to hear at a future time what is allowed, so we understand that it makes sense. Or maybe we say, well, how this sticks out weirdly. I don't know.
Sure. I think if nothing else, we've had that discussion. I think it's been a good discussion about, do we need to look at all the uses in the PB zone and determine whether or not there's others that we feel maybe are incompatible.
Well, yeah.
Have some history with the PB zone and what's been approved there. I think going back to the original point in the work meeting, though, again, this particular request is right. The result of some things that happened in the past, right? I want to make sure we don't lose focus of that there were some decisions made to try to accommodate something that had been done really that wasn't allowed. And we've tried to accommodate that. And I want to be really careful that we don't make a zoning decision based on that. That should not be the reason for this policy decision. So
I agree.
Okay. Sure. This is your discussion at this point before we open it up.
Thanks, Mayor. I remember we had discussions about ducks and pigs and remember that? How many ducks we can allow and how many?
I do.
And you did you surveyed cities. You went out and you said, all right, South Jordan does this and Orem does this, and they look at. Have we done a similar?
Yeah. I think what we found is, every city is a little bit different, but quite a few cities put these tattoo uses in their industrial zones. I think Layton is unique in that it's allowed in our CH zone, which is our broadest commercial zone. Lots and lots of acreage, 358 acres. Sometimes you'll see cities that have smaller zoning areas, or they're confined to some of those more industrial areas. And I think that's part of as we look at this use and evolve as cities. Again, that's something we need to look at. But I think in terms of where we allow them already, I think that Layton has a lot of areas already allowed for tattoo establishments. And that's one reason for our recommendation is that, again, as we look at the broader question of do we need to add additional zones for this particular use, as we look at the CH zone, we have 368 acres of CH zone property today, and we haven't seen a great deal of pressure from this particular use to be located in other places, except for this particular instance. So I think that's where we want to be really careful about. Do we already have enough supply for this zone? Is this the zone, again, is this the zone that it makes sense to expand to if we're going to expand the zoning? Our recommendation is we should look at some other zones if we're going to do that would allow for, again, other opportunities without kind of changing the complete nature of what this PB zone is supposed to be.
Yeah, I guess if back to the question of if someone came in tomorrow and said, I want to start my own, I want to open a business that just does permanent makeup, what we would do in the PB zone.
Yeah, typically we've seen those at the beauty shop. I guess we'd have to look at that. I don't know if we've seen that before. I'd have to check with our business license staff, but the ones that I'm aware of are ones that were associated with a beauty shop use. There could be one that I'm missing, and I don't want to make it sound like I'm giving that definitive answer, but that typically the ones we've seen have a beauty shop associated with them of some kind of beautician.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Council, you ready to open this up for our public comment at this time? If so, I need to entertain a motion to open the public hearing.
I make a motion that we open it up to public hearing.
Thank you very much. Okay, the time is now yours. Anyone in the audience that wish to make a comment regarding this particular item on our public hearing, you're more than welcome to. Once again, step up to the podium and state your name and what city you're from. Okay. Seeing that there's no comment at this time, then council, I'll bring it back to you for two things. One, if you want to further the discussion, you're more than welcome to, but immediately after, I ask that you close the public hearing and then take action on item A of our public hearing, which is the proposed amendment. So with that, council, it's your opportunity.
Another thought. Maybe it sounds like from the staff, professional staff's point of view, that there's not a difference. There is a difference, huge difference, big difference in the permanent makeup and tattoo, body art. And so if we have another discussion, a policy discussion, and we end up agreeing to some level that no, there's not a difference, or we're okay with those being similar applications, and tonight we say, well, not in the PB zone, then what happens moving forward? Does that make sense?
In other words, the implications to this particular applicant?
If you just say, you know what, we're not doing it, it's not going to be part of it, but then later on we decide through discussions, well, we've not necessarily changed our mind, but we've had this policy discussion, we've come to an agreement that, no, they're similar. Just maybe a thought for the council.
Because typically when we deny an application, they have to wait a year, correct? Is that where you're?
I'm talking about just the applicant, but just the implication of voting on tonight.
Right. Okay.
I want to just maybe offer a little bit more. You'd said some words that I want to make sure where we're at on this. You used words like huge and gigantic and enormous. I want to make sure I didn't use those. We see a difference. And that's the key here is there's a difference between these uses. What matter of degree that is, I think that is where that reasonably debatable. But for us, what I was trying to say from the staff's point of view is that there's enough of a difference that it's not difficult for us to distinguish between the two. It's not hard at all. We can make that call very easily and say this is this and this is this, and it's not difficult for us from a regulatory standpoint. It's actually pretty straightforward. So that's what I'm trying to say is that this is something that we feel the issue in this case is that it's just not right for every property that's zone PB. That's the issue. The other issue is, as you asked before, I think, Bettina, you asked, has the applicant had their other options explained to them? Yes. Do they like those other options? I think not. I think that's, some of those require them acquiring property from an adjacent property owner, going back through a zone change process. All of those things would be supported by the general plan, though, is if they were to get some additional property. Property that surrounds this particular parcel is property that could be incorporated because it's parking and other uses that could easily be incorporated in the parcel. So, we've had those discussions. I think that's that's something that definitely has occurred. I want to make sure you know that this has come as a result of many discussions with the applicant.
Okay, does that answer your questions? Are you ready to take action? Remember to close the public hearing, though.
Yes, I'd like to close the public hearing. So done? Is that all we need to do? Ooh, we got to use so done. So done. All right. I would also like to, can't think of the term, to turn down the proposed amendment to change the zoning, Title 19 zoning, Chapter 1906 land use regulation. Am I reading the right thing? Tables 616263. Denying. Wait a minute. What does it say? Propose amendments. Whatever I want to do, I want to turn it down. Okay. That way, all PBs will stay the same.
So you move to deny the proposed text amendment.
Whatever you said.
Okay.
Yes. Is that okay for me to do that? Okay.
Is there a second on this? Is there a friendly amendment to this proposal? Seeing that there's no action, Council, do you want to weigh in on what our choices are at this point?
I think the recommendations would be 1 to deny and 1 to send back to staff with a recommendation to make a change to the code. We'd have to go back and do it and start over the process because we don't have an ordinance to approve today.
Okay, does that help with any amendment to what Councilman Thomas's motion was?
I will make an amendment if I didn't realize we could do that we go back and that we are more involved with the, what do you call it, what's allowed in PB and that makes sense.
Okay.
I'll let our council weigh in on this as well, but I just want to be really cautious that we have an application for a certain decision tonight, and I think that's a good discussion to have, and we're happy to have that. But if there is a direction back to staff to look at something else, we'd like to have maybe that narrowed down a little bit to this application. This is a specific application asking for a change to the PB standards to allow tattoos in all PB zone properties.
Is his motion still?
Right now, that's on what's on the table.
Okay, I will second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to deny our public hearing discussion tonight. So I will do a roll call vote with that. I'll start with Councilmember Thomas.
Gee, let me think. I agree with Councilman Member Thomas.
Okay, Councilmember Smith Edmondson.
Nay.
Councilman Morris.
I'm going to say, from what you just mentioned, the fact that we don't know. I'd rather be safe and not knowing, but we don't know about all of the PB zones and all of the areas, and the decision made tonight that allows it for everywhere, with us not really knowing what we are agreeing to or what the policy is. I'd rather be safe on that side, and that's why I'll vote yes. But I want to have a further discussion and clarity, as Councilmember Smith Edmondson has explained. I'd like to have that soon and come to an agreement of what's allowed and where it's allowed. And I think that would be helpful, not just for the land use, but for business owners, and to keep Layton business friendly, and to make sure that we stay up with things that are changing. And if the PB zone isn't where it's allowed, figure out, once we decide what the policy is, then we can decide on the zoning. So, but I understand the urgency of I get what you were having to vote on tonight, but at the same time, we need to have a deeper policy dive on this.
Okay. Councilmember Bloxham.
Nay.
That's a nay?
Nay.
Nay. Interesting predicament we're in.
May I, Madam Mayor?
Yeah, can you speak louder if you could, just so we can understand? Councilmember Bloxham?
Yep. I'm not really treating this as a specific, all the history that we talked about. I'm thinking of this more in a broad terms, as if it is a text amendment for the PB zone. And I don't know if I've heard enough from the information that's been presented to why there is a distinction, other than the specifics mentioned about the process, some of the concerns that were mentioned. So I would like to have more information as to the PB zone in general. And I'm not sure that we get that with regards to this tab 2 question, if we simply deny it. And so my question maybe is, can you maybe restate what our options would be, and if there is a time sensitivity to deciding this now, or if there's a way for us to potentially have a more discussion when all Councilmember Roberts and myself are present, because I'm not able to see any of the maps, and I want to be clear about why I'm voting the way I do, but I want to make sure that I have everything in front of me as well. And so I'm left with the decision where I either have to deny, vote no, or abstain. And I'm not sure that really does much. So that's where I'm at on this.
Okay, I'm not sure if we all heard that very well, but Council, I'm going to have you weigh in on this, but I believe what he's trying to say is he just feels like this needs to have a further discussion before the vote is actually
that's
concealed. So, and could we actually bring this, even though there's a motion on the table here and a second, if Councilmember Thomas is willing to accept an amendment that we change this, can we? So that we can then have a further discussion before we actually take action on this item.
And I do apologize to the council. I didn't give that third option. So that is an option that you can table it and have a discussion, and we can bring it back for a further discussion. So.
Okay, and with that, we would need a date certain so that then the applicant is aware of it and knowing that we wanted a further discussion before anything is.
I would remind the council, though, that staff is here. I mean, they're here to answer questions on this. We've gone through it twice already. We've answered lots of questions. So on the issue at hand of doing the amendment, I mean, we've already gone through that. The staff's here to answer questions. We can do it now. So if you have questions now, we can do it. Keep asking questions and try to get clarity, because that's kind of what Bloxham, Councilman Bloxham indicated, is that he didn't have a lot of clarity, but we're here to add, here's the time.
or what I think his second point to that was that, one, we don't have Councilmember Roberts weighing in here, and then he himself is not real clear on all of this. So I think that's really the reason why they feel like they need to table it and then bring it back for further discussion.
That for sure is an option if we want to amend the motion.
Yeah, let me just at least. Sorry, I get a lot of feedback. I can hear myself talking on the but seeing that we're deadlocked at 2-2 with the council, I think not having Councilmember Roberts in attendance, I think we owe it, if we have a discussion like this, to have him be a part of the discussion and the vote.
Mayor, may I?
Sure, let's continue this discussion. Go ahead.
So, Councilmember Bloxham, what does Tyson? What does Councilmember Roberts? What are we going to talk about? As in the same decision we're talking about tonight, or the policy decision?
I think it's one and the same. I didn't hear the reason why Bettina voted no. I'm voting no. I'm not convinced that it's okay and all needs no.
Do you mind restating that again?
Yeah.
It got very jargled on our side.
Yeah, hold on. Okay, let me try this again. I didn't hear the reasoning why Bettina voted no. And so I can't speak for her. I can only speak for myself in that I'm just thinking of this as a single application because it's going to have the effect of being a change for the entire city. And I'm not convinced that it's distinguishable. But I'm also okay having some additional discussion because I can't see some of the maps and some of the things that have been presented in the meeting. They're not in the packet. Where, I wasn't able to see some of the things that Chad was providing. And so I don't have all the information that those are in attendance have, and we haven't had Councilman Roberts at all. So it was more just a third option, not necessarily saying it's the option I think I would choose. It's just the one that we still have other than just approving or denying it tonight. That's all.
And the maps, as you mentioned, part of my vote is that there are PB zones throughout the entire city in farmlands and middle of neighborhoods and different places, not around a commercial zone like what the applicant is talking about.
Right, and that's just not information that I can't see that obviously, and so if we're kind of the discussion was we needed to decide this tonight. We already decided it twice, but it's hard for me to decide it when all I can do is hear. I can't see, other than reading the packet, reading the minutes, reading the staff report, which I've done. And so I would like to see the full presentation, if that's possible.
Okay, I think I clearly understand this now. So I believe, before I make my statement, I see that Smith Edmondson would like to defend herself here or state her reason.
No, I actually would like to change my vote. And the reason for that is I clearly understand that we don't want to make decisions that are going to, for lack of a better term, encumber these zones in other spaces. I expressed my concern earlier, which is why I didn't explain my vote the second time, but my main concern was for this applicant, but also any other applicant who might question why a salon or beauty shop could do something similar to what this tattoo shop would want to do and cannot. That is a different discussion than tonight. And specifically because this lot that we are voting on is surrounded by the zone that it should be, the zone that it should have stayed to begin with, which is really why this is a complex situation tonight. None of us, we're here to help make that decision happen. And so it's similar to another situation we had last year where something happened that probably should not have happened, and then it puts us in a position where we're not certain how we want to proceed. I will change my vote to aye with Councilmember Thomas's denial of the text change to this amendment, with the expectation, as has been mentioned, that we discuss not just PB, but these types of uses and what zones are appropriate for them. Because as Chad, you've mentioned, it's very clear to staff the difference between, permanent makeup tattoo versus design art tattoo. It's not as clear to the rest of us, regardless of the type of materials that are used, the type of equipment that is used. There was discussion even in the minutes how there could be less traffic for these types of establishments versus a salon or a barber shop or a beauty shop, etc. So having a more robust discussion around zoning types and business types that are now prevalent that were not in the past, I think is very prudent for us as a growing city, as the largest city in the county, to have those. But for the purposes of tonight, I will vote yes.
Okay. And that's legal, right? Because I have not ruled on it yet. So I know I'm totally legal. Okay. So the way it sits right now, I have 3 in favor and 1 against, considering I have 4 council members here, which does give me the majority to go ahead and rule that this public hearing, what am I trying to say? That it does pass as far as a denial. So with that, that was really our last, and I do entertain the fact that it was called for a close of our public hearing. So that means our public hearing is closed and action has been taken. That brings us down to any unfinished business. Council, do you have any unfinished business you'd like to share with anyone at this time? Or anybody else on the dais? If there's anything you'd like to share, I'd allow you a moment. If not, then I will.
May I?
Sure.
I just forgot to make one announcement. One of our residents called me earlier this week to remind the council and also for the audience that the Mayor Brent Taylor Gala is on November 8th, 2024. It'll be held in Ogden at the Ogden Eccles Conference Center. And that's to, I believe it's a scholarship that is now being offered, as well as a gala in remembrance of Mayor Taylor, who was also a member of our armed forces, who was a fallen soldier. And so I did tell the resident that I would make that announcement tonight, and I forgot to do that at the beginning. So thank you.
Okay, that's a great lead in. And in addition to that, I want to also acknowledge the fact that we do have our Veterans Parade coming up in November. We will have one meeting prior to that, but any applicant that wish to participate in that parade, we ask that you go ahead and fill out the application. I believe the application is online on a Facebook page posted by Dennis Howland that you need to fill out and submit back to him. And I'm not sure if Parks and Rec is also receiving them or not, but certainly they are. Okay, great. But certainly this is a fantastic opportunity for us to really show our patriotism and our support for those folks that are willing to put their lives on the line. And if anything, if you do not want to participate in the parade, please come attend it. We really need to see people line the street and show our respect to these folks. So with that, the last thing I'll also say, knowing that we have an election, this is an election year, and your ballots have now been mailed out, so hopefully everyone will take the time to vet their candidates and be sure to vote on them and make sure you get your ballots back in the mail by the postmark date so that they can be counted. Okay, with that, I'll go ahead and entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Okay, thank you very much. We appreciate everyone's patience tonight and certainly a lively discussion, which I think was educational for all. So with that, have a happy Halloween.